Craving the coffee flavor you love, but without the caffeine? Kachava's got you covered with their newest coffee flavor. This all-in-one nutrition shake delivers bold, authentic flavor crafted from premium decaffeinated Brazilian beans. Quality nutrition shouldn't be complicated. Just 2 scoops of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake, and you've got 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, and so much more. Whether you're craving that coffee taste to kickstart your morning ritual, or as a nutrient-packed reward to round out your afternoon, Kachava keeps you fueled and satisfied wherever your day takes you. Plus, it actually tastes delicious. No fillers, no nonsense. Just the good stuff your body craves. And for the times you feel like switching it up, you've got 7 flavors to choose from, all with the highest quality ingredients. Treat yourself to the flavor and nutrition your body craves. Go to Kachava.com and use code FITNESS. New customers get 15% off their first order. That's KACHAVA.com, code FITNESS.
Good morning, brother. Hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Bad news is we are not going to be having bank shots for a very, very long time. But that said, we do have a now 2026-27 season to look forward to. We're going to talk with our good friend Colby Dant of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network about how he's going to be taking a look at this offseason. Some of the takeaways that we've got from this past season with the way that big men were able to dominate the game, because you saw with the teams that made the national title game. UConn, along with Michigan, very much built around their low post play. Heck, even Arizona was so dominant throughout the season, obviously died a horrible death in the Final Four, but lots of teams that were just built around big men. Is that going to be a little bit more of the norm moving forward? We do have to talk about the fact that Mike Malone became the new coach over at North Carolina on Monday as well. That was not something that we saw on our bingo card. Does he think it's going to work out? Does he think that this is going to be a flop? We're going to be talking about that and just some of the coaching moves that we have seen here in the offseason. In the final segment, we do have a few guys who have already committed to their new school. I'll give you guys a little bit of a roundup of that, and you're going to get a lot of, shall we say, roundups of guys when they land at their spots. Here in the first segment, I'm going to just talk about what we're going to be looking at for this upcoming offseason as well. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, large CM, the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And please do fire these in, because we've got a lot of off-season action to be taking a look at here in college basketball. It is going to be a long, arduous off-season, so please do fire these in. It makes my job a little bit easier, but that said, the way that things are going to be working this off-season is that you're going to continue to get a podcast every single day, so we're going to be taking a look at it because we do have 365 Division I teams from this previous year. It looks like we are going to be having West Florida, I believe it is, stepping up to the D1 ranks, so we're going to have at least 366 for this upcoming season, so that means that we have to stay dialed in. And when it comes to college basketball, we have already seen, and I'm going to refresh Verbal Commits, which is the site that I use to be able to track all these transfers during the offseason. We currently have in the transfer portal 1,762 players. The transfer portal opened up at either midnight Pacific time on the East Coast or midnight Pacific time on the West Coast. I'm not sure which one, but it opened up at midnight, and we've already got 1,700 players. If you do the math, that means that over 43% of players that played college basketball this season and have eligibility remaining are already in the transfer portal. It's why I've said it on this podcast the last few seasons, and I'll say it once again. It is news when a player doesn't enter in the transfer portal rather than when a player does enter in the transfer portal, and we're certainly going to be seeing more guys in the coming days probably enter in as well. And I'm not going to give you guys a big giant list of who all enters into the transfer portal as a result, because I'd be reading off a list of 1,762 players. Now, obviously, a few of them are walk-ons, what have you, but man, just assume if you're a fan of a team that your player is probably going to enter in the transfer portal, and when he returns, that's good news for you. That's the way that I take a look at things right now. We've already seen 1 or 2 guys, like Carson Templin. He was going to be contemplating going into the transfer portal. He has decided that he's going to be sticking with Utah State, so a congratulations to him. So that's good on him, but I mean, man, we've got a lot of moving parts that are going to be going along, and I'm going to obviously have my reactions when guys actually sign with teams, what it's all going to be meaning for them, and we're going to be keeping our head on a swivel with regards to coaching news as well. Haven't seen too much of it other than the big Malone signing for North Carolina. We're going to be talking about that with our good friend Colby Dant in the next segment, but I do think that it is very important to just be taking a look at the actual knowns, because the unknowns, they are very much in college basketball, and it's a big reason why I'm not a big, shall we say, futures guy to start with regards to college basketball. I think especially right now, it's just darn near impossible to be firing any sort of future wagers right now, because, yeah, like that Duke is going to have another nice recruiting class, that Kentucky is going to go out there and spend money, that there's going to be resources allocated to Florida, but you don't know about these NBA draft decisions. You don't know what some of these guys are going to be doing in general, and we're going to be seeing a lot of surprises here in the offseason. Like Bryson Tucker, who was playing over at Washington last year, not really a guy that got talked about much on this podcast because he wasn't even a big factor for Washington. He was averaging between 5.5 and 6 points per game. He was a 6'7" part-time starter that played in 21 games, made 14 starts, shot less than 30% from three. He decided that he was done with college and he entered in the NBA draft. Like, what are you going to be able to do to really gauge that? I think that was a shock to all of us, and I want to be questioning whoever gave him the advice to go into the NBA draft, but we're going to be seeing those sorts of moves as well. And when we do see some of these bigger moves, like last year, Yaxel Lendeborg was one of the big NBA draft decisions. We didn't know whether he was going to be going to the NBA draft, if he was going to be staying in school, if he was going to go back to UAB, if he was going to be signing elsewhere. Like, I'm going to be taking a look at that all throughout the offseason. I'm not going to be giving you guys reckless speculation on where transfer X, transfer Y is going to be going to. I know that's your sites like On3 Sports, 247, what have you. They're going to have their crystal ball. I'm not into that business. I'm sure that maybe there is a prediction market like Kalshi where you can predict where some of these guys are going to go. There's no money to be made here. It's all about getting set for a successful college basketball season, and I always like to say this: bets that are won during the college basketball season, they're done with great prep work by doing the leg work ahead of time, and that's what I'm going to be doing on this podcast. So that's just a little bit of an introduction to how things are going to be working here in the offseason. We're going to have on great guests like our good friend Colby Dant, who's going to be joining me in the next segment. We're going to be diving in on all the nooks and crannies of college basketball, so it's going to be a fun offseason, and I'll be with you guys throughout. And how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Colby? He does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. On the flip side, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Colby Dant aboard. Does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network with the show, The College Experience. He and Ryan McIntyre do a great job, not just with college basketball, but also with college football, college baseball, you name it, they do it. I believe they do some work for the Frozen Four as well, for those of you hockey fans out there as well. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at the Colby D altogether. And Colby, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Well, thank you, man. And I got a chance to see you out there in Las Vegas. That was fantastic when we were covering the opening round. It's always bittersweet coming to an end, but nowadays in college sports, there's no off season. As you know.
No, there is not. It's over 1,500 players, I believe, hit the transfer portal within 24 hours of it opening. And how do you take a look at things this offseason? Because we know that Donald Trump signed the I don't know what you want to call it. The document, I think, is the best way of putting it, saying that you can only transfer once without penalty within 5 years and all that stuff, but it does not seem to be slowing down any of these guys, and because it takes effect August 1st, I think that most of these guys will be grandfathered in, and feels like it's going to be another offseason where it's going to be the wild, wild west.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know what the heck that actually achieves because, I get it, it's an executive order, but I just struggle to really understand what that's going to achieve. More lawsuits, I guess. But I'm all for trying to limit some of the transfers. There should be a middle ground, but I don't know necessarily how to really understand what that's really going to achieve because, I thought the timing of it was weird because it seems like more of a political ploy than actually any really meat on the bone. I don't think you really can based on what other judges have said. So I'm struggling to understand what has really been achieved there, but the portal is crazy. I think it will remain crazy, but sure, I like it. In theory, I would love to see. I don't mind transferring, once or twice, but I do think you should have to sit out after one. But I don't know how you're gonna get the genie back inside the bottle at this point. So I don't know what to expect there. But I can't expect this though. For the content creators to be dropping emergency episodes every time there's a coach or a player or whatever that is departing or perhaps transferring up, transferring down. For us, I guess, as crazy as it is, I would imagine. I think back to when I was a kid, it might have been harder for me to get into the sport with that many players transferring nonstop. But anyway, it is what it is. For us, it'll definitely have us doing more off-season episodes just on that.
Hopefully you're not doing an emergency episode every single guy hits the transfer portal because, man, you're going to have about 2,500 episodes. That is going to be a lot, to say the least. But all in good fun over there. And just how do you take a look at this offseason? Because I know that I've been asked by a few people, hey, who do you think should be the favorite going into the next year? And I just frankly tossed up my hands because Michigan pretty much built their roster in 2 weeks almost completely on transfers, other than Will Shedder and Nobari Burnett. It was a completely new team from last year, and I think your favorite going into the season is still at this point a team with probably only 2 or 3 guys on the roster right now.
Obviously you got to be paying attention to that. There's some schools. I do think that at the top you can kind of figure some things out, right? At the top, sure they could add pieces, which, obviously Michigan did. With Lendenberg, we didn't even know he was going to go to the NBA, right? At that point, we kind of thought, I remember one of our preseason episode or off-season episodes a year ago, I thought he might go to the NBA. I was kind of convinced, I don't think he's coming back. But yeah, I think we can kind of pigeonhole some players to return to play for schools because the money is too good, and I don't think they're projected to be a first-round draft pick in the NBA. Obviously, the obvious ones, DeBance is going to be gone at BYU, and so on and so on. I would assume, right? You think he's gone?
Oh, yeah.
I think the money brings him back. I'm waiting for, because in football, they have that rule where you have to play 3 years. But in basketball, the money is guaranteed, too. It's just so much of a different game. Whereas the NFL, it's not. Maybe some of the top 10 picks or something. But it's definitely hard to really pigeonhole everything. I do think you could look at, because nowadays you see it in football, you see it in basketball, you even see it in baseball. If you are a school that's gigantic, that has a ton of resources, Texas isn't going to lose their best player. And if it is, it's to the NBA. So you can kind of get a read on that, or Texas Tech, or whoever, with these billion-dollar boosters. So you can kind of, I would say, you don't know, they're probably going to add some reserve players, but you can kind of get a little bit of a read on how it's going to look at the top of the sport. Now, get to the mid-major ranks, you need to wait. Even the lower-level P5 teams, Colorado Buffaloes just had a bunch of players in the portal. I have no idea what that team's going to look like. I would say you just look at the top. You can kind of get a read on the top 20 programs from a year ago. After that, it's vague.
Yep, it certainly is vague. And man, it's going to be interesting to see how some of these teams are going to be able to just revamp their rosters in general. We saw Kentucky spend more money than any team in college basketball last season. And we saw that panned out for them. Wasn't necessarily the world's greatest, so I thought that was interesting to say the least, as we do have Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And while there's a lot of unknown as to where these guys are going to be going, one thing became clear on Monday, and that was Mike Malone going to North Carolina. And I do want to get your thoughts here, because this is one of the big unknowns that we had going into last week that is now a big giant known with North Carolina. Do you think that this is going to work out? Because obviously the guy knows basketball. basketball. He led the Denver Nuggets to a title. He helped make Nikola Jokic what he is today. But at the same time, too, we have seen a lot of these guys go from the NBA down to college, not have a lot of great results. And I feel like having that transition either way, like going from college to the NBA / going from the NBA to college, it hasn't worked out for a lot of these guys, sans Larry Brown.
And I believe you mean Mike Malone. Mark Malone, the former ESPN NFL analyst, but
yes,
and Pittsburgh Steeler. But yeah, I was pretty perplexed. I don't know how everyone else received this, but I was kind of blown away by this news. I am a skeptic. I know he won an NBA championship. I know he played for the Greyhounds of Loyola, Maryland back in the early 90s. He was in the college game in the 90s at Oakland, who was D2, I think, at the time, in Michigan there, and then Providence under Pete Gillen. But, man, he hasn't coached college basketball since 2001 when he was an assistant for the Manhattan Jaspers. The game has changed a lot on the college level. Now, I guess you could say, well, it's almost turned professional at the college level, and maybe he'd be more hip to that. He's never been a head coach in college basketball, so I am a skeptic. I was thinking about this as I was driving when that news happened. You can make the argument for the former NBA players being successful at the college game as a head coach like Tony Bennett. Larry Brown, I guess you could even tie Larry Brown back to being a college coach, then a pro coach, then a college coach, right? Like, what is the one, trying to think just off the top of my head, I'm probably missing an obvious one. Like, what is the obvious one that I'm missing? Because Patrick Ewing was an assistant. He went to Georgetown and did not do well. Chris Mullin, I don't even think he was an assistant. I think he was front office for the Kings or the Warriors off the top of my head. He failed.
Eric Musselman was an NBA coach. That's one that worked out okay.
One. There we go. That's one. And his dad obviously was an NBA coach as well. So, okay, that's one. But that, man, we were talking about him last night. We think he's on the hot seat next year at USC, even with that great recruiting class. Yeah, I have a lot of questions. We'll see if he can. Now, you're at North Carolina. It should be very easy to win because they give you a ton of resources, even though the Big Ten and SEC seem to be, in better footing right now. It's still North Carolina. Michael Jordan's a phone call away. Roy Williams is right there. The basketball tradition and history they truly care about. But if you told me, I think the question to always ask yourself is, are they better today than they were yesterday? I don't know that they are. I guess the unknown sometimes is better than what you know. I did read some type of poll that said most of the ACC coaches, or one anonymous ACC coach said everyone is bummed that Hubert Davis is not coming back because we thought his teams weren't well prepped. Okay, well, there's validity a little bit there, but he was also an anonymous coach. But I just think they struck out. I think it was kind of a disaster as far as a hiring process. Kind of reminded me of Penn State. Now, Penn State lucked into, this is a football comparison, Matt Campbell. But look, I had gotten word. I went to a North Carolina baseball game in Chapel Hill in the past couple weeks. And at the time, when it was unknown about Tommy Lloyd and stuff, I was told that Mark Byington was one of the lead candidates. I thought that would have been a much better hire than this. Now, that doesn't mean this isn't going to work. Coach for Gillen. He's coached for Greg Kampe. So he's got some decent connections with college basketball. But you have my attention. I'll say that. It kind of out of left field. You saw the Belichick disaster. So we'll see if I'm curious what your thoughts are, because I did a list of 15 candidates when that job opened. He was not on there. So there was Billy Donovan on there. There was Brad Stevens on there. There was Jay Wright on there. I did not have Michael Malone. I'm fascinated to see it work out.
Yep, I am right there with you. I have question marks. I think that it could work out better now than it could have, say, 5-7 years ago, because now you do have a general manager. Now you do have guys that are getting paid, so I actually think that helps them out a little bit. But I still have tons and tons of question marks, so we are right there in the same boat, Kobe. And that, I think, is one of the more, shall we say, interesting hires of the offseason. And just when it comes to what we've seen thus far in the offseason, who are a few teams that you feel like got it right? Because I just put towards the top of the list, Utah State. The fact that they were able to bring in Ben Jacobson, I thought that was an absolutely amazing move for them. I think that Jerry McNamara going back to Syracuse, that's a good move, because I feel like we've seen already a lot of moves here in the offseason. Probably going to have a few more with regards to coaching searches, but I feel like a lot of teams have done a pretty solid job in terms of finding their men, along with Will Wade going back to LSU, which we saw that work once upon a time.
Yeah, I mean, the Will Wade one was hilarious. You know, a lot of the things he had said in Raleigh, and there's been rumors that he got his house months ago. in Baton Rouge, but at the same time, I think LSU will be better for it. If you're asking yourself that question, if you remove all the drama, I think LSU got themselves a better basketball coach in a better situation, even though we know the history there. But the Jerry McNamara one's interesting because I was kind of the opinion throughout the year that Syracuse should not go for him. Then, obviously, the Duke game in the tournament and making the NCAA tournament, the run in their conference, in the MAAC conference run. I know he's ignited the fan base, I shouldn't even say fan base, ignited the NIL, which I think is, from what I understand, like they had definitely struggled. Their biggest donor, I guess, was pissed at the university. So whatever you can do to get that situated, because it makes no sense. Syracuse has a bunch of successful alums. I don't understand how they're struggling in NIL. So that one, I guess I'm waking up to. I still think sometimes you keep going into your own, your own circle. I don't always know that that's the best way to do things. And Adrian Autry was certainly in their circle. And if you're an Adrian Autry backer, probably saying, well, he could have used that NIL money that Jerry Mack's walking into. But I'm a little more open to believe that can work than, say, in December or something. Ben Jacobson to Utah State was a slam dunk. I think that one stands out to me as probably one of the best ones, if not the best, off the top of my head. He's been fantastic at Northern Iowa. I thought Northern Iowa got robbed this year, personally. I don't think St. John's should have been a 5. And them just getting St. John's, I think if they play another 5, they were alive to even, I think, win a game or 2 in the tournament. So that was a tough draw for them. But love that hire. Utah State is turning into VCU over there of the West. Also loved John Gross going to Charleston. I actually think that's an upgrade. Like, I know Mac's solid, but I think Gross is, to me, he's proven a little bit more to me. I think that's an upgrade for Charleston. I was surprised at the news of Rick Croy leaving Cal Baptist, takes him to their first NCAA tournament, and then departs to be on Randy Bennett's staff at Arizona State. That one, if you're a Cal Baptist fan, I mean, I guess he had a meeting and wanted them to invest more in basketball. They told him no, and now he's at Arizona State. But if you're an Arizona State fan, I think that one right there, you finally are getting your stuff in order. I think Randy Bennett and Rick Croy will be fantastic in Tempe. I just wonder how long it takes. It's not like they're traditionally huge in the portal, but who knows? Now you're at a Big 12 school. Maybe they do that. Another one that I would say was Luke Murray at Boston College. Can't wait to see that one. Obviously, he was a longtime Danny Hurley assistant and the son of Bill Murray. That's one where I'm intrigued because I've always thought UConn was so well coached. I think this year, to tell you the truth, the job that Danny Hurley did, I think it was the best of his career this year. I don't think that roster was that good. To get them to the national championship, and even they covered in the national championship, is remarkable to me. I just didn't think their team was that good this year. I thought, like, best case scenario, Elite 8. Like, everything goes right. Elite 8. That one I'm very fascinated to see because I can't imagine Luke Murray takes that job. If you're an assistant at UConn and been with Danny Hurley that long, I would assume if you stay put for 1 year longer or whatever, you're going to have your options. I can only deduce from Luke Murray taking this job at Boston College that Boston College is starting to be serious about basketball. Because, like, to me, if they interviewed me and I was UConn's assistant, I would say, why should I even take your phone call? Because you don't commit the amount of resources to the other big ACC schools. I am currently an assistant at like one of the best programs, if not the best, this decade. So I'm going to have offers knocking on my door left and right. Why should I take this job? And I know nothing of it. I didn't see anything about this, but I can only imagine that they said we're going to invest like we have never before in basketball. So that makes me very curious because if not, it just doesn't make sense for Luke Murray to take that job.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I thought that was a great hire. And when you can find a guy who's at home knock off the Monstars, you know that you're doing something right. So shout out to Boston College there. And I mean, just from this past season, to go backwards a little bit with regards to this conversation as well, is there anything that you learned from this season that is going to just maybe have a little bit of influence on how you do view the offseason? Because I thought that it was so interesting that this year, the big men, they really did reign supreme. Like, you take a look at the teams that made the Final Four, pretty much all of them were based around front courts, which it's not to say that the guard play was bad, but I would argue that the teams that made the Final Four didn't necessarily have top 4 guard play in all of college basketball. They were very much built down low, and I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how these teams maneuver in the transfer portal, because we know that big men in the past have gotten a lot of money, going back to the likes of Kofi Coburn, Drew Timme when he was staying over at Gonzaga, Hunter Dickinson, etc. And I feel like the big men are very much going to get paid big time this offseason.
Yeah, that's kind of the renaissance that's happening within the sport. And I feel like college basketball overall, say what you want about the portal, but I feel like the sport is thriving. Maybe it's the Euros coming in, but the level of basketball being played, I think, throughout the nation is better than it's ever been. I think there's more good basketball players on planet Earth than there's ever been. That would add up. But yeah, it's been a renaissance. When I first got into college basketball, college football and everything was in the 1980s, late 1980s. And the teams were all pretty much like you just explained. They were built big. Like, okay, guard play didn't matter, but it wasn't as substantial. And then they got away from that. And it felt like over the past 20 years, really, it had been kind of guard driven. I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head. When you look at it, it's completely kind of turned into that. They're playing big again. And that's just kind of what you're seeing it like. That's kind of just sports in general. Like that, you could pick the sport and in football, you're starting to see the ground game come back. Zig and zag, yin and yang, like what they do successfully here 10 years from now, the evolution of it changes. They catch up to it. It comes back around. But I do think it's a more entertaining product. So, and I do think you're right. I think big men are going to be highly sought after more than ever. They've always been sought after before, but to your point, whether it was Drew Timme or Coburn or some of the others we've talked to or seen over the years, it did seem like you needed to have great guard play, and like the big was kind of overrated. But not back when I first started. When I first started watching it, when Georgetown always had the bigs that they had, whether Mutombo or Mourning, and you could go one by one about the bigs in college basketball, Joe Smith at Maryland and so on and so on. Like that was essential. So I'm glad to see it returning, but yeah, I think it's highly sought after. And I also think that's one of the reasons why the mid-majors have struggled some this year and last year is the evolution of the game. You go back to like the late 80s and early 90s, the mid-major upsets weren't nearly as common. So, like, people are freaking out saying, oh, there's no mid-major. Go look at the 80s and 90s. Look at the 80s and 90s, specifically the early 90s, right? And you didn't see the type of upsets that you saw really in the past 10, 15 years. So, it's just the cycle, because you can't get a 7-footer. If you're at Longwood recruiting or something, it's very hard to find a 7-footer in general, let alone a very good 7-footer. So, yeah, I think people are exaggerating like the portal thing. I think, yeah, that matters some, but I also think there's just the evolution of the game. The pendulum swinging back is also responsible for that as well.
Yep, I do agree with you there. It's going to be a lot of fun to take a look at what we're going to be getting this offseason. Kobe, I'm sure that I'm going to be talking with you many, many times as to what we're all getting. Hopefully a little bit of clarity within the next few days on where some of these guys are going to be going. It's going to be wild. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a lot to track, but I know that I'm going to do my best to be able to do so. I know you and Ryan McIntyre are as well, so love the good people at home. Know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Oh, heck yeah, man. Thank you for letting me come on the show. We host the college basketball experience, but really the college experience, youtube.com/the college experience, iTunes, Spotify. I host on iTunes and Spotify, it is the college basketball experience, but also the college baseball experience, the college football experience, FCS college football experience. So those are all separate podcast feeds, but we come together as one on YouTube, youtube.com/the college experience. And we are part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network there. So check them out. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the Colby D. Thank you. I know it's one day removed from the Natty, but it's always basketball season for us.
Oh, it is for me as well. That's why this podcast has went over 2,200 straight days without a missed podcast. That is a string that will not be broken anytime soon. And I know that Kobe loves this game much like myself. He's going to be dialed into everything that we get this offseason. So big thanks to Kobe for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Coming up next, we have actually seen a few guys sign with teams. It's not a lot of guys, but we do have a few guys that have signed with teams. I'm going to give you guys just the guys that we know where they're going to be going. That's up next. Here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Colby Dant, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball and so much more every single time he joins me. He lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So a big thanks to Kobe for joining me in the last segment. And now it is that time of the podcast, and I give you a roundup of the actual known elements of the transfer portal. There are a few guys that have already committed to specific teams. I think that in order to do so, you need to be a graduate transfer. That's why we saw Tyler Lund Lundblad. He's the one big player off the board that's already committed to a school. He has decided that he is going to be going to Tennessee, and he's had a lot of eligibility. His first year was actually the 2021-22 season over at TCU, where he redshirted, but he's coming off of a nice year over at Belmont, where he shot 40% from three, 15.5 points, shot 93% the free throw line. Tennessee has really been looking to just have that one go-to scorer over the last few seasons. That all started with Dalton Connect a few seasons ago, so bringing in a guy like a Tyler Lundblad really carries that on, so that's big, and that's what I'm talking about with regards to what I was mentioning in the first segment. We're going to take a look at known elements, what it means for these teams, how it's going to be able to impact them, and when you do have something like a Brennan Rigsby, for example, he was playing at Walford this past season, entered in the transfer portal, and he's already decided upon his destination. That would be Nova Southeastern, which that's a really good Division II school, but he's going to be going down to the non-Division I level. That makes things very easy. All you need to do is cross Mr. Rigsby off the list of guys who you need to evaluate and move on with your life. So that's something that's helping you out, and I will alert you of a few of those as well. Probably not going to be going too much into the D2 recruits because, again, don't make money being able to evaluate some of these Division II guys, but we did see a few guys from Davidson decide to enter in the transfer portal, and they've already decided upon their, shall we say, stomping grounds. Joe Hubert, he has decided that he is going to be going from Davidson and he's going to be going to the Citadel, and this is a bigger one. Hunter Adam, he was a relatively solid player this last season for Davidson, and he has decided that he is going to be going to the Pilots of Portland. For Hunter Adam, he was a guy that came off the bench, gave you about 5.5 points per contest from three-point, shot about 39.5%, good 6'8", 6'9" size. He's going to be helping them out big time for the Citadel. They're picking up a guy in Hubert who is averaging 1.6 points and 3.5 rebounds per game, so he was able to give you a few boards per contest, but only saw action in 8 games for the Citadel. Probably going to be another rough season for them. They don't have a lot of NIL, to say the least, but that said, they do have a little bit of a pickup there, so yay verily on that front, and yay verily on the front of this one for Gavin Doty. He has decided that he is going to be teaming up with Jerry McNamara, and he is going to be heading on over to Syracuse. For Doty, he was one of the main guys for Siena this last year, guy that stands right in that neighborhood about 6'7" or so, has a really good skill set in general. 18 points, 7 boards, threw in there 2.2 assists per game, did shoot about 32.5% from three-point range, and you'll notice this a lot with many of these coaches. They are going to be trying to bring over their guys, so a guy like a Ben Jacobson, for example, who's over at Northern Iowa, you have to imagine that he is going to be trying to recruit a lot of his own. That's just the way that things work in this day and age of college basketball, but that is something that is going to be going down as well. And then really the lone other guy that decided that he was going to be going to a different school, other than DeAndre Jones. DeAndre Jones was over at Kent State this last year. He is going to be going to Cleveland State. That I don't think is going to be necessarily a big move, but at the same time, it helps out a Cleveland State team that this last year, it was a little bit less than savory for them. Jones was averaging 4.5 points per game for Kent State, but that said, he played in a very small sample size of 7 games, so we'll see what's happening there. But Tamari Wheeler-Thomas, he was a big part of North Dakota State this last season. He's decided that he's going to be going to Boise State. Boise State, very underachieving team this past season, but he was another one of these guys that is a graduate transfer, so he was able to commit to his school a little bit earlier than most of these guys. Shot 38.5% from 3, 14.5 points, 3 assists per contest. So we do have a few guys up on the board. I'm going to be alerting you to these moves day in and day out when we do get them. Probably going to be a little bit slow going here in the next few days. It's really going to be picking up in the next week or so, and I'm committed to giving you guys a college basketball podcast every single day. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Good Seems, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you'll have one of 2 ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, that's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks once again to our guy Colby Dant, who does such great work over the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He joined me in segment number 2, and I'm with you guys, like I said, every single day on this podcast. Once the season gets started, once again, picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. In the meantime, you will, just like in past seasons, by the way, I forgot to throw this in here at the top, but I will throw it in here again. Once we have things a little bit more stabilized, I will do a specialized conference preview podcast for every single one of these conferences as well. Rest in peace to the WAC, but There's going to be a new iteration of the WAC for this upcoming season, so that'll be a lot of fun, but you are going to get those conference preview podcasts here throughout the offseason as well. Those will probably be starting up more in like June. You're probably going to be looking at like 2 months before we start those up, but those will be getting started up once again, so be on the lookout for those. Be on the lookout for our fresh podcast, so midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, every single day as well, and I'll be back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.